The sun was barely rising when Rachel dropped her keys on the kitchen counter, exhausted from the long flight back from her latest business trip. The clock on the wall showed 6:45 a.m. She had just enough time to grab a cup of coffee before jumping into the daily grind. Another meeting, another project, another deadline. Her corporate finance job at Westbrook Industries was demanding, always requiring her to give 110% and then some. Her cell phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down at it. A text message from her daughter Sophie. "Why weren't you at the parent-teacher conference yesterday?" Rachel's heart sank. She had completely forgotten about the conference, another thing to add to the pile of things she had to do but never got around to. She quickly typed a response trying to sound casual. "Sorry, honey. I had to work late. I'll make it up to you, okay?" The message was sent, but the guilt lingered. She was doing the best she could, right? She had to work hard to provide for Sophie. After all, it wasn't just about putting food on the table. It was about giving Sophie a better life, a life Rachel hadn't had growing up. But as Rachel sipped her coffee, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Sophie had always been a quiet, good-natured child until recently. Rachel could feel the distance between them growing, though she couldn't quite pinpoint why. Sophie used to look up to her, to smile when Rachel came home. Now, the 5-year-old was barely speaking to her, often retreating into her room the moment Rachel walked through the door. The previous week, Sophie had come home with a notice from school about a fight she'd gotten into during lunch. Rachel had brushed it off, assuming it was just a minor incident, nothing compared to the challenges she was facing at work. Work, where Rachel spent most of her waking hours striving to climb the ladder and provide the best education and lifestyle for Sophie. "She's just going through a phase," Rachel mumbled to herself, putting her cup down and grabbing her briefcase. Sophie was just a teenager, a difficult, independent teenager trying to figure out who she was. What teenager didn't rebel, right? Rachel didn't have time to dwell on it. The office was waiting. As she rushed out the door, she gave Sophie a quick hug before heading to the car. Sophie, still in her pajamas, barely acknowledged her, offering only a mumbled, "Bye, Mom." "Have a good day," Rachel said, but the door slammed before she could even finish. Rachel's day started like every other, with a flurry of emails and conference calls stacked high in her inbox. By mid-morning, her boss, David, called her into his office. Rachel had been working on the company's new expansion project for the last 6 months. It was going to be a major undertaking, one that could significantly boost her career if she succeeded. She stepped into David's sleek, glass-walled office, the walls lined with high-end artwork and the kind of minimalistic design that always made her feel small, despite her position. David was already seated, reviewing documents. "Rachel, take a seat," he said, looking up. His tone was casual, but his eyes sharp, business as usual. "I've been reviewing the numbers, and I have to say, this project is looking solid. I think you're the perfect fit to lead the expansion initiative. It's going to require a lot of travel, but I know you're more than capable of handling it." Rachel felt the familiar rush of excitement. This was what she had been working toward, an opportunity to take the lead, to prove herself in the company. The new markets would require her to fly to California, Texas, and possibly Europe, meeting with new partners, overseeing the implementation. It was everything she had wanted professionally. It was also exactly what she needed to feel like she was moving forward in life. But there was a catch. "Of course, the travel schedule will be tight," David added, his gaze dropping to a note on his desk. "You'll be gone for most of the next few months. It'll be a lot to juggle, especially if you're still handling your usual tasks." Rachel nodded, trying to hide the quick flicker of guilt that flashed through her. Traveling for work was nothing new to her. She'd already missed countless events, school plays, and birthday parties. Sophie had become accustomed to seeing her mother rush out the door, suitcase in hand, promising to make it up to her when she returned. David didn't seem to notice her hesitation. "This is a big deal, Rachel. Think about the career boost and what it means for your future here. You've earned this." Rachel smiled, but it was tight. She had earned it, but at what cost? She forced the thoughts away. Career first, family second. It had been her motto for years now, a mantra that had propelled her to success. Meanwhile, back at home, things were starting to unravel with Sophie. Rachel hadn't been aware of the extent of Sophie's rebellion until that afternoon when she received an email from the school principal. Sophie had skipped her math class for the third time that week. Rachel stared at the message, disbelief mixing with frustration. This wasn't like Sophie. Her daughter was usually quiet, studious, and compliant. Rachel quickly called Sophie, but, as usual, she didn't pick up. When she got home later that evening, Sophie was already in her room, headphones on, eyes glued to her phone. Rachel knocked gently on the door. "Sophie," she called softly. "Can we talk?" Sophie glanced up briefly, then went back to scrolling through her screen, the typical sullen teenage response Rachel had come to expect. "Why aren't you answering my calls?" "You're skipping school?" Rachel asked, her voice tight. Sophie shrugged, not meeting her Gaza. "I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry about it." Rachel's temper flared, but she kept her voice steady. "You haven't been fine, Sophie. You're skipping school, you're barely talking to me, you're acting out. What's going on?" Sophie sighed dramatically, tossing her phone aside. "I don't know. Maybe I just don't care anymore." Rachel froze. She hadn't heard those words from Sophie before. Her daughter had always cared about her grades, her friendships, even her extracurricular activities. To hear her say she didn't care about anything, it felt like a slap in the face. "You don't care about school? About your future?" Rachel asked, struggling to keep the edge out of her voice. Sophie stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the street below. "No, I don't care. It's like nothing matters when you're never even around. You're always at work, always traveling. When was the last time we did something together? When was the last time you actually saw me?" Rachel's heart sank as her daughter's words hit harder than any argument could. She had been so focused on providing for Sophie, on giving her the best opportunities, that she hadn't noticed the distance growing between them. "I'm doing this for us, Sophie. I'm working so hard so you can have everything you need," Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion. But Sophie turned around sharply, her voice cold. "You think I care about things, Mom? I just want you. You're always working. You've missed everything." Rachel stood frozen in place, realizing Sophie wasn't angry about school. She was angry at her, at how much Rachel's career had taken priority over her life. And Rachel didn't have an answer. She had always told herself that the sacrifices were worth it, that Sophie would understand when she got older. But now, seeing the hurt in her daughter's eyes, she wasn't so sure anymore. Rachel stepped through the front door, the familiar weight of exhaustion sinking into her shoulders. Her business trip to Dallas had been grueling, endless meetings, client dinners, and early morning flights. She had barely spoken to Sophie in the past 3 days, but Rachel told herself it was fine. Sophie was 14 now. She didn't need her mom hovering all the time. Still, as Rachel closed the door behind her, something felt different in the house. The silence was too heavy. She dropped her suitcase by the door and called out, "Sophie, you home?" There was no answer. Rachel's heart quickened. She walked down the hallway to Sophie's room, knocking softly on the door. "Sophie?" she called, her voice tentative. The door creaked open, and Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Sophie was sitting on the edge of her bed, her knees pulled to her chest, eyes red and swollen from crying. Her face was a mixture of frustration and sadness, but what struck Rachel the most was the emptiness behind her daughter's eyes. "Sophie?" Rachel whispered, stepping into the room. "Honey, what's going on?" Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, sniffing. She didn't look up. "You really want to know?" Rachel's heart squeezed. She sat beside Sophie on the bed, but Sophie pulled away, moving to the far side of the room. "What's going on?" Rachel repeated, her voice softer now, trying to hide the panic rising in her chest. Sophie stood up, crossing her arms. "It's funny, you know, how you can be in the same house and still feel like you're invisible." She stared at the floor. "You're never here. You're never around. You're always gone, always working." Rachel flinched, the words stinging more than she expected. "Sophie?" "No," Sophie interrupted, her voice trembling but firm. "I get it, okay? You have to work. You have to climb the ladder, make money, make sure I'm set up for life. But what about me? When was the last time you asked how I'm doing? When was the last time you really, truly looked at me? When was the last time you asked if I needed you?" Rachel's throat went dry, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She had always believed that providing for Sophie, giving her the best, the material things, was enough. She worked long hours, took on high-profile projects, Also, Sophie could go to a good school so they could live in a nice house. Wasn't that enough? Sophie continued, her voice quieter now, but the pain still evident. Do I even matter to you anymore? Am I even important? Rachel's heart cracked. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. She hadn't realized until this moment that, in her pursuit of success, she had been blind to the most important thing, her daughter's need for connection, for her mother's love. Before Rachel could find the words, Sophie shook her head and walked out of the room, leaving Rachel alone in the silent house, her chest heavy with guilt. The next morning, Rachel's phone rang just as she was stepping into the office, her briefcase in one hand and a coffee in the other. "Hello," she answered, her voice distracted. "Hi, Rachel. This is Principal Anderson from Oakwood High." The principal's voice was calm but firm. "I wanted to inform you that your daughter, Sophie, was caught sneaking out last night to hang out with some friends she doesn't know very well. We were able to speak with her, and I just wanted to make sure you were aware of the situation." Rachel froze, her coffee sloshing onto the floor. "What? Sophie was sneaking out? But she's never done anything like that before." Her mind raced. She had always trusted Sophie, never thinking she'd go behind her back like this. The principal's voice softened. "I'm sure there's an explanation, but I just wanted to let you know that we're handling it here, and we'll talk to her when she gets to school today." "I think this might be a sign that there's something going on beneath the surface, Rachel." Rachel ended the call, her thoughts spiraling. Sophie had been acting out for a while, but this was different. This wasn't just teenage rebellion. This was a cry for help. As the day went on, Rachel sat at her desk, the phone calls and emails piling up, but her mind wasn't in the office. It was with Sophie, her heart heavy with the realization of how much she had failed her daughter. Sophie was reaching out, and Rachel had been so consumed with her job that she had missed every sign. Rachel looked out the window at the busy streets below, her thoughts swirling. She had always told herself that the sacrifices were worth it, that success would make everything else fall into place. But now, the most important thing, the thing she had taken for granted, was slipping away. Sophie wasn't angry because of school or the latest fight with her friends. She was angry because Rachel had neglected her. She was angry because, in the process of building her career, Rachel had forgotten the one thing that truly mattered, being a mother. And Rachel realized, with a sharp pang of regret, that no matter how successful she became, none of it would matter if she lost Sophie. The next day, Rachel walked into the office, feeling a weight in her chest that she hadn't felt before. She looked at the pile of work on her desk, the projects, the meetings, the deadlines. Everything that used to feel urgent and important now seemed distant, unimportant in comparison to what had happened with Sophie. By lunch, Rachel had made a decision. Enough was enough. The frantic hustle, the endless work, the constant push for promotions and accomplishments, it had all consumed her, and in the process, she had lost sight of what really mattered. Sophie was still in her life, but if Rachel didn't make drastic changes, she wouldn't stay in it for long. She took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and dialed her assistant. "Hey Jenna, I need to reschedule my meetings for the next week and push back the deadline on the expansion project. I'm going to be taking some personal time off. Can you handle the communications for me?" There was a brief pause on the line, and then Jenna's voice came back. "Of course, Rachel. Is everything okay?" Rachel hesitated for a moment before answering, her voice shaky. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just need to focus on something else for a while." When she hung up, Rachel felt a sense of relief wash over her, but it was quickly followed by the daunting realization that she was stepping away from a job that had been the center of her world for so long. But in that same moment, a spark of hope flickered. Sophie needed her now more than ever. That afternoon, Rachel walked into her apartment, looking around at the familiar space that now seemed too quiet. Sophie was in her room, and Rachel knocked softly before stepping inside. "Sophie?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with a new resolve. "Can we talk?" Sophie was sitting at her desk, headphones on, scribbling in a notebook. She barely looked up. "I don't have anything to say, Mom." Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, taking a slow breath. "I know I haven't been there for you, Sophie, and I'm really sorry." Her voice cracked, but she swallowed the lump in her throat and pressed on. "I've been so focused on work, on what I thought was the right thing to do, that I forgot what really matters. I forgot about you. and I don't want to do that anymore. I'm cutting back on my hours. I'm going to be here for you, for us." Sophie didn't respond right away. She kept her head down, her fingers fidgeting with the corner of the paper on her desk. But Rachel noticed the slightest shift in her posture. Sophie wasn't as closed off as she had been before. "I'm also going to help you with whatever's going on, Sophie. I made an appointment for therapy," Rachel continued, her voice soft but determined. "I know things have been tough between us, and I want to fix that. Together." Sophie still didn't say anything, but Rachel could see her daughter's hands slowly stop fidgeting. Sophie looked up for the first time, meeting Rachel's eyes. "You really mean it, don't you?" Sophie's voice was quiet, hesitant, as if she wasn't sure if she could believe it. Rachel nodded. "I do. I don't care about anything more than being here for you. We're going to start over. Together." In the days that followed, Rachel began to keep her promises. She rearranged her work schedule, cutting back on the long hours and constant travel. She told her boss, David, that she couldn't take on as many responsibilities at the moment and needed to focus on her daughter. He was surprised, but he understood. She didn't feel the need to explain further. Rachel also started attending Sophie's school events, showing up at her parent-teacher conferences, and carving out weekends just to spend time with her daughter. They rediscovered old activities they used to enjoy together, cooking dinner on Saturday nights, playing board games, even watching movies they had loved years ago. These small moments became their way of reconnecting. At first, Sophie was hesitant. She wasn't sure if Rachel's new effort would last or if she could truly trust her again. There were moments of silence, awkwardness, and even frustration. But Rachel didn't give up. She didn't push Sophie too hard to open up. She simply listened when Sophie wanted to talk and offered support when Sophie didn't. One evening, after a quiet dinner at home, Rachel was cleaning up the dishes when Sophie joined her in the kitchen. Sophie leaned against the counter, her arms crossed, but there was a softness in her eyes that Rachel hadn't seen in a while. "You're really trying, huh?" Sophie said, her voice thoughtful. Rachel smiled, turning to face her. "I am. And I'm sorry it took me so long to realize how much you needed me." Sophie nodded, looking at the floor for a moment. "It's been hard, but I think I'm starting to believe you." Rachel stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on Sophie's shoulder. "I know I've let you down, but I'll keep trying. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Sophie didn't say anything, but Rachel saw her daughter's lips curl into the smallest smile. And in that moment, Rachel felt like she was finally starting to rebuild the bridge between them. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and Sophie continued their path toward rebuilding trust. Sophie agreed to start therapy, and they worked through the issues that had built up between them. Rachel knew it wouldn't be easy, but the small steps they were taking together, like enjoying dinner at the table, taking weekend walks, or simply sitting in silence together, were the foundation of something new. The weeks that followed brought noticeable changes to Rachel's life, both at work and at home. As the initial challenges of balancing her career with her personal life continued, Rachel found herself gradually redefining what success truly meant. She was still deeply committed to her work, but now it didn't consume her every waking hour. She had become more selective about the projects she took on, knowing her priorities had shifted. Rachel's boss, David, was initially skeptical when she had requested to cut back on her hours. But to her surprise, he respected her decision. He even complimented her on the way she handled the major expansion project, which was still progressing smoothly despite her reduced involvement. This reassurance helped Rachel realize that she didn't have to choose between being a good mother and a good employee. She could be both, if she just learned how to manage her time. She started using her weekends as sacred family time. No emails, no phone calls, just focused, uninterrupted moments with Sophie. Their Saturday routine became sacred, morning walks, baking together, and even simple things like watching old movies with popcorn. For the first time in a long while, Rachel felt like she was actually present, not just physically, but emotionally. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table after dinner, Sophie put down her fork and looked across the table at Rachel. There was a softness in her eyes that Rachel hadn't seen in months. "Mom," Sophie said, her voice a little shy but steady, "thanks for everything, for really being here. For me." Rachel smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You don't have to thank me, honey. I should have been here all along. I'm just glad I'm here now." Sophie hesitated for a moment, then spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "I know you've been busy, but I think you've really changed. It feels different now. I feel like I can talk to you about stuff." Rachel reached across the table, placing her hand gently on Sophie's. "You can talk to me about anything, always." As the months passed, Sophie's behavior continued to improve. She started excelling at school, her grades going up as her emotional state stabilized. No longer withdrawn, Sophie became more engaged in extracurricular activities and even started to enjoy family events without resentment. She shared her thoughts more openly, and Rachel began to see glimpses of the bright, confident girl she had always hoped Sophie would be. One afternoon, as they were walking home from a local park, Sophie turned to Rachel, her tone light but meaningful. "Mom, remember when I said I didn't want you to be working all the time? Well, I think I was wrong." Sophie paused, letting the words sink in. "It's not that I didn't want you to be happy with your job. I just didn't understand why it always had to come first. But I get it now. You're still my mom, and you're still here for me." Rachel felt her heart tighten with emotion. Sophie understood, not just the change in Rachel, but the shift in their relationship. They had weathered the storm of emotional distance, and now they were coming out stronger than ever. Rachel also found herself reconnecting with other parts of her life that had fallen by the wayside. She started reading more books that weren't work-related, took up yoga to relieve stress, and even began dating again, slowly. Sophie was supportive, joking that Rachel was too old to be on dating apps, but encouraging her to put herself out there. The balance Rachel had longed for between work, family, and personal happiness was beginning to feel natural. Rachel and Sophie's relationship became a source of strength for both of them. They shared everything now: fears, hopes, dreams. Sophie came to Rachel when she needed advice on friends or schoolwork, and Rachel was always there to listen, guide, and support. They had created a bond that was unshakable, rooted not just in shared experiences, but in mutual respect and understanding. Rachel found herself more fulfilled now, not because her career had taken off, or because she was climbing the corporate ladder, but because she had learned to prioritize what truly mattered. Family, connection, and emotional presence were the things that gave her life meaning, not the numbers on a paycheck or the title on her business card. As she walked into the kitchen one evening, Sophie was sitting at the table, doing homework, but she looked up and smiled when Rachel entered. "You know, I was thinking today," Sophie began, eyes bright, "if I'd kept pushing you away like I did before, we'd probably still be stuck in that weird place where we couldn't talk. I'm glad we didn't stay there." Rachel's chest swelled with pride. "Me too, Sophie. Me too." Rachel learned that true success isn't measured by career achievements or financial status, but by the relationships we nurture and the time we spend with those we love. She discovered that balance is the key to a fulfilling life, and family time is irreplaceable. By reconnecting with Sophie, Rachel realized that emotional presence and genuine connection were what truly brought meaning to her life, not the work that had once consumed her. Family, love, and understanding are the real measures of success.